Welcome to From Stuck to Scaled, Growth Strategies for Small and Mid-Sized Businesses, your guide to navigating growth, transformation, and success in today's ever-changing business landscape. Each week, we'll dive into proven strategies, real-world case studies, and actionable insights designed to help small and mid-sized business owners scale smart, lead stronger, and grow faster. Let's get you unstuck and on the path to sustainable, scalable success. Now your host, Julio Gonzalez.
Welcome back to From Stuck to Scaled. I'm your host, Julio Gonzalez. When your business scales, your HR role explodes. It suddenly includes recruiting, payroll, benefits, training, compliance, and culture. And often, you expect one person to manage it all. Today, we're challenging that expectation. We're discussing why HR can no longer be a one-person show and how smart leaders can optimize resources to ensure their people strategy actually supports growth rather than slowing it down. So let's get started. Joining us is Monica Martinez, Regional Sales Manager at PuzzleHR. With over 25 years of experience in operations, sales, and leadership at Fortune 1000 companies, Monica brings a 360-degree view of the challenges in today's businesses. She has lived and thrived through the daily complexities of recruiting, onboarding, and retaining top talent. Monica is client-centric in her work and an expert in resource optimization. And now let's welcome Monica to the show. Monica, I am so happy to have you on here. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and PuzzleHR?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. So PuzzleHR is a fractional HR services company. Think of us as humans executing human resources. So we are truly those people that could come in and help clients when they don't have enough hands-on people inside of their business. And we can come in and augment a current HR department and really provide the lift and support that they need to ensure that they have all their HR needs covered.
And how did you get into this business with PuzzleHR?
That's a great question. So, I personally was a practicing HR manager for probably around 7 years. And I had the opportunity to, walk in those shoes on a daily basis and truly handle all aspects of HR, things like recruiting and leadership development, onboarding new employees, handling payroll functions, talking about employee benefits, and then handling all the compliance pieces that come with, wearing the many hats of HR. So did that for many, many years. And I worked at another payroll company for over 20 years. So I really was, working with small to mid-sized businesses for many, many years, and truly got to get a good understanding on what the challenges are and how I can help them. So I've been now at PuzzleHR for 3 years, and it's an amazing opportunity. Again, I get to speak with companies of all sizes and just truly see how I can bring some solutions to the table.
HR is one of those many roles in business that are undervalued because HR tends to be the catch-all for everything else. So, talk to me a little bit about, how you've seen the HR role expand, really so much over the years that it's a challenge to be effective as an HR leader. And with that, how PuzzleHR helps that HR leader be successful.
Yeah, so, I think in the perfect world, when you look at all the roles and responsibilities that fall under the umbrella of human resources, the perfect world would have probably a staff of 5 or 6 people, because again, there's so many different specialties that fall. You have people that really need to understand the world of benefits, payroll process and all the things that go along with that. And then you have the true HR side, which is, about building culture and, bringing the right talent into their business. And so I think, companies struggle with trying to have their HR people go in a lot of different directions. And so, you can't effectively be out there recruiting people for your business and, all the while ensuring that they're looking for the best benefits to be able to, to provide to their employees, in addition to planning, things to make sure that their employees are happy. So I think a lot of smaller businesses struggle because they're trying to juggle all these different areas. And so what we try to do is when I'm talking to a client, I'm trying to understand from them, what are the top 2 or 3 things that are keeping them up at night when it comes to managing their employee life cycle. And then from there, I'm able to bring solutions to the table. It could be working with that HR manager that, again, is processing their payroll, handling the benefits, and dealing with the compliance, and say, let me take that payroll piece off your plate so that your HR person can focus more on the cultural side and the leadership development side and the growth, and support the if they're scaling, and some strategy inside of the business. So
And they're also dealing with distractions because in so many organizations, HR ends up being facilities and security and things like that. So
yeah,
I'm assuming with your help, they're able to focus their efforts a little bit more on HR, so that when these distractions come up, they have a little bit more room.
yeah, absolutely. Let's face it, HR becomes the therapist. They're, everybody comes to them and they want a piece of their time. And, there's lots of other HR functions that need to be done on a daily basis, right? So, they're trying to handle performance management, or they might be doing a renewal for their benefits, and they have a line at the door of people needing their attention. So, it's important to be able to provide them, their employees, a place where they can go to answer basic questions that, really it would be great if HR didn't have to stop to answer. And that is something that we bring to the table through one of our, Employee Direct Connect programs.
So through our conversations, I've learned that you don't provide an HR person. You provide multiples so that every role has a focus. So talk a little bit about how you help those small businesses through your entire suite of services.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I mentioned, when we took a look at HR, we took all of those roles, we broke them down into individual services. So that makes it really easy for a smaller business to work with us, because we don't necessarily have to do all the things. So, we have businesses that have a finance person or an office manager wearing that HR hat. And so they're okay potentially handling their payroll process, or even onboarding new employees. But when it comes to the actual compliance of HR, and potentially writing SOPs for their business, or talking about culture, or handling sticky situations, they just don't have the expertise, or really the degree that's needed in order to execute those things. So when I'm speaking to a client, I kind of do a full discovery, kind of get an idea of how they're handling each area underneath that HR umbrella. And again, if it's true HR support they're looking for, we can do that. Sometimes it's them saying, you know what, I spend so much time hiring and recruiting. I can use some talent management help, and we can come in and do talent acquisition for them. They then handle the HR piece. Or it could be just helping them onboard. Maybe they have a lot of new hires that come on a monthly basis, and they don't have a human that they can dedicate to providing a world-class onboarding program. And so we can come in and just do that piece for them. So we really are augmenting, either an HR department, or really for those companies that don't have one, that are smaller in scale and don't need full-time HR support.
So I know you guys can support all different size companies, but looking at it from the side of the small business owner, at what point do I call you because I need help?
Yep. So that's a great question. So because we offer so many different services, I'll give you some examples, right? So if you're a franchise that has 0 employees, but you're looking to bring employees on, you would have no employees, but you'd reach out to us, and we potentially help you do that talent acquisition piece. If you're a small company that's looking to grow or scale, you need infrastructure. You may have 4 employees today, but you're looking to get to 15, 30, 50. And honestly, by the time you have those 50 employees, you are now late to the game if you don't have your infrastructure in place, right? And so what I'm talking about are your policies and procedures potentially, or, what does your talent strategy look like? Or, do you need to look at career laddering, succession planning for people that you're bringing over from a competitor, executive compensation plan? So a lot of times companies say, I'm too small, but the reality of it is you've got to look ahead. What does your company look like 6 months, 9 months, 12 months down the road? How can we get things in place today so that you're ready for growth, and have the ability to bring new employees on? Again, if you're bringing them from a competitor, they're going to want to know that you have your ducks in a row, that you are a well-established company with policies and procedures. And so that makes it a lot more attractive for them to leave and come over. So infrastructure is important. So I would tell you, employee size is not that important. It's all about understanding the need for having your things in place moving forward.
I I'm gonna have to cut that out. um, I talk a lot to my customers about around properly sized planning. And you talked a lot about policies and procedures. One of the things that I've done historically throughout my career, and I've focused a lot on with my customers, is things like business continuity planning. And a business continuity plan doesn't have to be a 100-page document. It can be 10 bullet, on a sheet of paper. It's knowing how to respond in the case of a situation. So I want to reinforce with our listeners that some of the things that you talked about, yes, sound really big, but they can be properly sized for your 2-person company or your $100,000 a year revenue company. It doesn't have to be, 500 employees and $500 million, right?
So being a fractional HR company, we are really ideal for those clients who don't necessarily need 40-hour full-time employee. So with that said, we understand the needs of these smaller businesses. And no, we're not trying to go in and put in 20-page documents and things that are not going to fit for that size company. What we can do is we're able to give them what they need now, and then we grow with them as they move through. What we see in a lot of these smaller companies is, again, they have somebody in bookkeeping or finance or office manager that are handling these HR tasks. They don't understand the strategic side of the business. And so they don't have not only the skill, but the resources to put together these types of programs in order to help that client get where they need to go to 10, 12, 15, 30, 100 employees. So, we're able to come in and help them scale and give them what they need with the size that they are today, and then help them grow as they move through.
So let me ask the question from a different perspective. Now, how do I know what am I experiencing in my business? What pain points am I experiencing that I say I need help?
Yeah. So I think if you have some turnover, right? So turnover generally goes along a lot with the culture of the business. Your mission, your vision, your values, are those being executed from the top down? So again, if you're an owner and you've got 10 employees or 12 employees, do you even have something that's, do you even have vision, mission, and values? But most of the time people are leaving, they're unhappy maybe with the compensation, that potentially could be their compensation wasn't looked at. Maybe a compensation survey wasn't done for that particular role. I think a lot of times people don't have a great idea of what they want their employees to do. And that comes along with, a proper job description and really communicating with HR, what do you want these 3 or 4 people to do? Oftentimes people put people in the wrong seat on the bus, right? And so that can cause turnover, people leaving. So I think there's just a lot of misfires when it comes to hiring strategy and talent strategy. And then there's also a misfire when it comes to the expectations of what they want from their employees, right? So they bring employees on and they say, you know what, we probably can have this role, be remote, but then they didn't set the right expectations for what that looks like. So I think you've got to have some planning in place, and you need to have an idea of the bigger picture of what you want your company to be. Because if you don't, you have people that just roll in and out. So again, the turnover issue is a problem. Again, the culture and not having your leaders lead by example, the shadow that they cast, right, and model what that behavior should look like from their employees. And it doesn't matter if you're 4 employees again or 50. Those people are looking at the leaders to, as an example of what that company should look like. So just a couple of examples.
And when you go into an organization that does have an HR person, and when I say I'll say one HR person, you're talking to that leader. How do you get them to understand all of the different roles that sole HR person is working on, and how you can help not just the HR person, but the organization. How do you get that message across?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I'll tell you, I see this a lot in our C-suite, right? They don't understand why HR is not doing all the things that they're supposed to be doing. But again, when you come from that role and you know all those responsibilities, the best thing that I can tell a C-suite member is talk to your HR folks and find out, where their passion lies and what do they love to do inside of their job. And if resources allow, give them the additional support, because if they are truly the culture champions of the company and they're able to be that face of the company, and the company has the resources to bring in someone like us in the background, we can happily execute the tasks and the initiatives that HR person does not have the time to execute. And it's something that we see all the time from an HR standpoint. Our HR managers, directors, you know what, they're trying to be superheroes. Again, they're therapists to their employees. They're trying to execute, potentially a new training program, performance management. They could be, again, looking at their talent strategy or having to revamp their onboarding. That's very task heavy. So again, you say, if they're spending all of their time handling all of those tasks, when are they out there being that culture person for the company and the employees? And hence you get people that are saying, I'm not, my HR person doesn't have time for me, or they're not working with the managers to help upskill them to be able to work with their employees. They're just bogged down with the day-to-day. It's just too much. So I think the HR folks understand at times that they can use some help. We come in, we partner with them, we help augment that department. And that's what we want to do. We want to be that back office support system, providing them resources so they can be the best HR people they can be for their managers and those employees. And again, help, live out that positive culture that'll help keep that company healthy from a people standpoint.
And I'm glad you touched on that, because that's exactly where I was going to go. I think HR has evolved significantly in the past, 20 years, because HR was very transactional. And I don't know that it was HR's fault, but today HR is a true business partner and involved in, the strategy and even product development. What has your experience been, with that evolution and your partnering with businesses?
Yeah, so I'll share this. When I was in HR many years ago, we were referred to as personnel. We were a personnel manager, and it really was very task driven, putting people in the system to get paid and things of that nature. But it wasn't looked at as a strategic role. So I would say what I see a lot out there is you have your HR directors and the people that align with C-suite that are very strategic and they are able to have those conversations, or you have your HR generalists that are managing tasks. I think sometimes you see that there's a gap somewhere in the middle, right? Where, you have an HR manager that has the skill set to deal with all the basic functions, but they don't have that strategic, that strategic mind to align with somebody at C-suite to see where the company may be going in X amount of years. So, that is something that we can help. So when we go and talk to a client, we're doing a little bit of both. It's really where that gap lies. So if we're talking to that HR manager or the HR generalist and they're like, you know what, I'm always asked to look 9 months ahead, come up with what talent should look like or where our company is going to be, how many employees, taking a look at open roles. I don't have the skill set nor the time to really sit down and evaluate those things because I'm busy doing these other things. That's where we can come in and say, let us strategically align with C-suite and have those conversations. And then the opposite is also true. You have someone who says, I don't want to deal with managing the benefits or dealing with payroll, and I just don't have the budget to hire somebody to do that. So I'm stuck doing that. And therefore, my C-suite does not look at me as a valued strategic partner because I don't have the time to sit there and have that conversation. So it happens on both sides, and we can come in and fill gaps on both those areas.
And what would you recommend to that business owner as far as properly engaging HR to be that valued business partner?
So are you asking like in their company today if they have an HR person already?
Yeah, because again, one of the things that I talk a lot about is maturity, and maturity, process maturity, organizational maturity. And, I think that HR as a business partner is a more mature um, version of HR and the company. So how do you get that business owner to elevate themselves in order to treat HR as a true business partner?
I mean, I think first they have to recognize, how important that role is by far. Your HR person should be at, every high level meeting. They should be able to take notes. They have to have an idea and be involved in what that company is looking to where that company is looking to be in the next 12 months. Because again, I see this happen all the time, right? So there's a meeting, HR is not involved. They were expected to know that they needed to have 10 people hired in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Well, you can't just expect them to know that. We need to have maybe some job specifications, and again, understand what roles we're looking to fill and why. Do we have people currently? Do they have people currently in their business that could potentially fill those roles? Right. So we want to promote from within. None of those conversations are going to take place except by that HR person, because that is the way they think. They're programmed to think like that, and so they really need to be at that table. But it starts with C-suite understanding and viewing that HR person as a partner and realizing the benefit and the value that they can bring, because they are looking at all aspects of the business, the people side, the growth, budgets, all of those good things.
And one of the things we haven't touched on is change, right? HR is an integral part of change management in most organizations, especially when it comes to culture. I've always brought HR in on my projects. I did project management for a very long time. So anytime there was any kind of, disruption to the business, HR, I need your help. I need your help because, you may have, employees that are afraid that they're going to lose their job. You may have employees that need upskilling. So what can you tell our business listeners or business owners, around change with regard to HR?
Yeah. So I'll say two things. I think we see this a lot when companies are looking to merge or acquire another company, right? You have lots of duplicate roles. You're not exactly sure, who's made to sit in what seat. And it's extremely disruptive, and it's extremely nerve wracking for these people because, like you said, they don't know whose job, who's going to have a job, who's not going to have a job. So I think, high communication is super, super important in those situations. But, I would also say, you know, embracing change, everybody struggles with that. And I think embracing change and understanding again what the end point is. Where are we looking to be? Are we wanting people to jump on board? And I think there's strategies behind that, trying to find a couple of your leaders that you could talk to and kind of get them on board with whatever it is that you're looking to change or bring into the organization, and then have them be your champions as they're talking to all of their employees. But I think, your HR business partner needs to have an understanding of what is looking to be implemented or changed, so that they can be on board. That's got to be number one, because if they're not on board or they don't understand, it's going to be really hard to communicate to the rest of the staff on, why they're looking to make this change. We hear that too. I don't know why they did it, but they just told me I needed to head it off. And you could just see in their persona, their attitude, they just were not brought in. They weren't explained why, and they just weren't on board. And hence, you have a trickle down effect of problems that come along in the organization from that.
Yeah, and communication is the biggest roadblock when it comes to change. If you think that you're communicating enough, you're not. If you think you're over communicating, you're not. So, making sure that you are constantly sharing the right message, a clear message, getting feedback is critically important when it comes to change. And, who better to leverage for that than your HR experts?
Yep, absolutely.
Help me now with resource development. A lot of companies struggle with, I can't bring on enough resources. So how have you worked with business leaders to maximize the value of the resources that they have, and maybe leveraging instead of full-time staff, maybe some contractors or temp labor. How have you worked with business owners on that side?
Yeah, so I think, going in first, what we want to do is kind of figure out where the gaps are, right? And so from our perspective, just from an HR standpoint and trying to bring in other people, there are many strategic conversations where, and I think I mentioned this earlier, you find, you have somebody that's really, really good and enjoys, the hiring process, but that's not their primary function, right? They're handling the payroll. So you may have a company that does have maybe 2 or 3 people, but they're on the wrong seats of the bus. So, one of the things that I do with them is really understand what talent they have there and talk through, if that person had their dream job, what would it be? What would they ultimately like to do? You hear a lot of these people say, I would love to do the onboarding and maybe some training of new employees that come on. Okay, well, that's great. Maybe we can move them into that role. We come in and help them with the talent side of things, or vice versa, some type of combination of that, right? But I think, our HR team is really the ones that have that strategic conversation when it comes to moving the talent around and getting an idea of what they need. To your point, there are ways, you don't necessarily need to have your uh, someone who's answering the phone, maybe they don't need to be 40 hours, less amount of time. There's somebody else that takes on that role. They're onboarding 20 hours a week, but then they can do that role on the other 20 hours a week. I think you can always be a little strategic with the current staff that they have if you have an understanding of what everybody's role is.
Monica, one of the things that I've seen a lot happen, and I have a friend currently in this situation, he is an, in big quotes, invaluable employee. And where he is right now, they're never going to promote him because he is so critical in his role that if they promote him, the business is going to suffer. Um, how do you handle that situation, both from the employee side that's looking for career growth and from the business side that hasn't taken the time and made the efforts to backfill that person in order to avoid any potential impacts to the business? Because there's always that chance, they win the lottery and say, see ya. So it's a pretty significant risk to the business, yet I see it happen again and again and again. So how would you advise both the employee and that business owner on how to address that situation?
So that's a great question, and I'll tell you, being in leadership, we've all gone through this. And here's what I would say: I'd say having a career laddering program, right? Obviously, succession planning; those are two crucial things. The worst thing that you could do is take somebody that is looking to grow and not have a plan to move them through or have the ability to promote them. They will leave you. They're going to hit a ceiling. They're going to feel they have no place else to go. And, then yeah, just like you said, they're going to say, sayonara, I'm out of here. And now that skilled person is going to go work for somebody else. So as a company, I'll say this, like, shame on you. You have to have other invaluable people, right? And so leadership development, training and development are also important so that you're not left in that situation where you have this great person, and if they leave, your business is going to fall apart. So from a company perspective, you've got to train your people. You have to understand what the goals are of those employees, right? That's a lot of that goes together with performance management, right? So when you're sitting down doing a performance review with somebody every 6 months or a year, understanding, where they're looking to go, what are their ambitions, what are their aspirations, having conversations around that. And clearly you need to have some type of program to be able to support that, because what you can't do is have the conversation, make promises that you can't fulfill because you don't have those roles available. You also just have to be honest. Maybe you are a company that does not have career growth and you're not going to be able to offer that person another job. Maybe you need to do other things for them. Maybe you are giving them salary increases. Maybe you are, giving them other responsibilities that's not maybe, moving up, but more lateral, right? So maybe taking on other responsibilities to make them feel valued and show them that there's some value there. So I think those are some things. As from the employee side, I think when you're interviewing and you're talking to these companies, I think it's important to ask that question, right? Like, do you have a career laddering program? Are there opportunities for growth? If it's not in the area that I'm in today, can I move to another department in the company? So I think as somebody that's applying for a job or looking for opportunities, it's your responsibility to have an understanding of what that company is. Now, I'm not saying that you don't take the job because the company's in its early stages and they're not that big, but you should understand the potential of where you may go if you spend 2 years, 4 years there. So I think it's alignment on both sides, and I think it's important to talk through it. If you're sitting down again for your review, have that open conversation as an employee. Potentially, I love working here. I'd love to have an opportunity to be in leadership, or again, to work in another department, or get more training in what I'm doing today. I think it's important to have that type of dialogue. But as a company itself, you can't just rely on that one person, because somebody else will offer them, maybe not even $1 more, but that growth and that opportunity that they're looking for, and they will leave, and your productivity and your business is just going to take a fall from that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Monica, we've covered a lot of great topics, but as you know, no one leaves the show without providing some actionable tips that our listeners can implement today to positively impact their business. So what can you tell our listeners?
Yeah, I would say C-suite and owners of companies, talk to your HR team if you have one. You want them to be happy. Look at them as a valued business partner. Bring them in to your meetings. Allow them to, provide feedback and give ideas on what they think that the company needs in order to do better. Even if there is a financial impact there, listen, because they're the ones that are talking to your employees. And if your employees are happy and they stick around, your business is going to flourish. So I think that if you're recognizing that you don't have enough of a team, if you're realizing that your HR people are struggling and you're not able to get things done, talk to somebody like us and allow us to have the opportunity to come in and provide that support so that your company can grow and be successful.
And Monica, where can our listeners find you?
Yep. So we are obviously on LinkedIn. Our website is www.puzzlehr.com. And I'm sure, Julio, you could also provide contact details for me. My email address is mmartinez@puzzlehr.com.
Yeah, and I will put all of your contact information in the show notes, so our guests and our listeners can definitely go and find you there. So, Monica, thank you so much for sharing your deep experience and reminding us that HR is a strategic function and not just a single task list. If your business is growing, you must invest in systems and specialization to manage the many hats of HR, or risk losing your best people. Take Monica's advice, check in with your HR team today, and start optimizing where help is needed most. That's how you scale intelligently. Thanks for tuning in to From Stuck to Scaled. I will see you next time. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you so much, Julio. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to From Stuck to Scaled, growth strategies for small and mid-sized businesses, produced by Optocution LLC. For more information, tools, and resources, check out our website www.redefinepossible.co/podcast.